Calaroga Shark Media.
Hi, ho, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Nice job, Burt Kreischer, Tampa native. He's announced a benefit show for victims of Hurricane Helene. It'll be at Ruth Eckerd Hall on Saturday, October 12th, 8 p.m. Surprise guests will be announced. I bet Burt can get some, especially in Florida, get some pretty good people to show up at this. Burt said, I was born in St. Petersburg, raised in Tampa, and went to school in Tallahassee. Anything that happens in the state of Florida, I always feel like happens to me. I think all Floridians feel this way. Florida defined me, and the Bay Area's family. I'll do anything to help family. All proceeds from the show will go to Metropolitan Ministries to aid relief of hurricane victims. Bert Aid is what you want to look up if you want to attend that. The LA Times did a nice profile of Ahmed Ahmed. He started taking acting classes when he was 19, met Vince Vaughn, and crashed on Vince Vaughn's couch. He said, I was making good money booking roles as the terrorist, the cab driver, the sleazy guy. I called my agent and said, can I audition for the friend, the doctor, the lawyer, the cop? Ahmed says, whenever there's a conflict in the Middle East, that's when my career either rises or falls. He got tired of the typecasting and stereotyping, said it didn't feel right, and that's when I decided to shift into stand-up comedy to have a voice. He started doing a weekly show at Dublin's on Sunset. They had a big metal tub of peanuts, and people would throw the shells on the floor, but every Tuesday night, rain or shine, would fit 300 people. This is scary. In 2015, after performing at Palestine's inaugural 1001 Laughs Comedy Festival, Ahmed was halted at the Tel Aviv airport. He said he was detained with M16 rifles in his face, strip-searched, and interrogated for 12 hours. He described the Israeli Defense Force as inhumane on Facebook, which resulted in dozens of messages accusing him of anti-Semitism. He says, I'm Semitic. I wasn't saying anything about Jews or Israel. I was criticizing the Israeli Defense Force. That's like NWA saying F the police. Per the LA Times, Ahmed says, ever since, I've been irrational. I've had blind range. He describes some incidents as comic drama between him and other stand-up comedians that have gotten him bounced from the Comedy Store and the Laugh Factory. During one show, an audience member made a 911 call. Ahmed had said, how many Muslims or Middle Eastern people here in the audience? Great, there's a small group of us in here, but hey, it only takes one. 2 cops appeared at the club the following night, but he was allowed to continue the set. Ahmed joked, is a terrorist organization going to send their headhunter to an American comedy club? I want you to fly all the way to America. I want you to learn English really good. I'm going to put you in comedy classes. Eugene Merman spoke to WPR about appearing on Flight of the Conchords way back when. It's been a minute since that show. How did you connect with Brett and Jermaine? By the way, are you familiar with the Mandela Effect? That's where, like, things you're convinced happened are true, and then the world changes. I'm originally from a world where the guy on Flight of the Conchords was named Jermaine with an R. At some point, I teleported to where you and I are now, where the guy spells his name Jermaine. That was not the case. Also, where I'm from, on Game of Thrones, the lead actress's last name is Headley. There's no L in her name anymore. I don't know what's going on. Maybe that explains the Bob's Burgers thing. Maybe where I'm from, there is no Bob's Burgers, and that's why you guys think there is one? Something like that? We'll get to that in a second. Eugene said, I did a show in Edinburgh, I think, in 2005 and saw them and met them. And I believe Dimitri Martin had done a show with them maybe before that. And they were coming to the U.S., so we did shows together in small venues in New York. And they were at Aspen Comedy Festival. When I was there, it's like anything. You meet people you enjoy and you work together. So I auditioned for the role of Eugene, even though they had written it for me. WPR said, you, of course, supposedly provide Gene Belcher's voice on Bob's Burgers. Gene plays pranks and plays the keyboard. What do you and Gene have in common? Eugene Merman said, a certain probably goofy warmth. Gene is what I would be like if I were a kid now to a degree, but I think he's a goofy, warm jokester, so that might be a bit of what we have in common. Also a love of food. Nikki Glaser was on Bill Maher's Club Random. What do you think they talked about? Here, I'll give you a hint. The subject is Nikki Glaser. What do you think Nikki Glaser talked about? That's right, Taylor Swift. Maher said if Taylor Swift said vote for Trump, he'd win. That's not good. Trump with his supporters, that's a cult. But so is this. It's a cult. Maybe a cult leader can be a source for good and not evil. And I think she genuinely is. I have no reason to put her down or desire to. I always have the greatest respect for success. You don't want to take on Taylor Swift. Joe Coy did that. You remember what happened there. Relax, Scott. I'm not going to play it. Billy Gardell said when Bob Hart's Abishola wrapped up its 5th and final season, he decided to go back to the stage. Billy said, I thought I was done with stand-up. I'd taken 3 years off to make some health changes in my life, and when I came off Bob Hart's Abishola, I thought, all right, maybe I'm done with stand-up. But the bug hit me again. His comic buddies, Chris Titus, Steve Byrne, Alonzo Bowden, Ian Bagg, and Jay Leno, that's a crew. That'd be a pretty good show. Kept pestering him to return. How would you line those people up? Let's see. All right, here. Let's play this game. Right, it's Billy Gardell, Titus, Steve Byrne, Alonzo Bowden, Ian Bagg, and Jay Leno. All right, so Ian's got to open. Is it Gardell's show? Is he the headliner in this? So he's last. So you got to put Leno right before him. Alonzo's a killer. Steve Byrne is not a household name, but is pretty good. All right, so I would go Ian Bagg, then Titus, Byrne, Bowden, Jay Leno, Billy Gardell. You'd go see that show. Anyway, I digress. Gardell said, I went down and saw Ian performing at the Irvine Improv with my wife, and man, it hit me. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this again. And so I got back up on stage, and I'm like, I'm a different person. I've lost 173 pounds. I'm older, and those were things to write about, and I'm an empty nester now. And so I found some inspiration again. It's just been fun to get back up. Now, that being said, I've gone back to the clubs because, nowadays, if you're not on the internet, no one knows who you are. Man, he had back-to-back hit CBS sitcoms. I hope somebody knows who he is. I'm 55 now. The only channel I watch is CBS. Nobody else cares about me. 25 to 54-year-olds, they care about you. Me, no one cares. I'll just sit here with my disposable income and not spend it on your products. I digress again. Billy says, so it's kind of like starting over, but with no pressure, and I'm really enjoying it. At this age, stand-up was always my first love. How old is Gardell? Did I say this already? He's 55. He's 3 weeks older than I am. So yeah, he should be on CBS. We could watch CBS together. At this age, stand-up is always my first love. I love acting just as much. But stand-up's who brought me to the dance, and it's great to be up on stage in this place where I'm doing it just because I want to do it. Like, you feel that way at the beginning, and then if you get successful, there's pressure and commitments and all that. And now I've come through that, and I'm at this place where I'm just doing it for the love of the game, and it's very fulfilling. He talked about having the 2 sitcoms. When you're lucky enough to get a show, when it ends, there's a lot of tears and heartbreak, because you and the cast of the crew, you kind of become a family. We did that through COVID with no audiences, and it was just us in there trying to make this little show about love and family. And one of the great through lines of that show was when you marry somebody, you marry their family, and it shows that we're all kind of the same. We have a crazy mother, we have a wacky sister, we have a cool uncle, and it reminds us that we're all human, and that show did that beautifully. So when it comes to a close, you can't be too down. You're obviously sad, but you have gratitude, because to have that happen to me twice is just beyond my comprehension to this day. I'm grateful for anybody who's watched the work that I've done, and they're the reason my kid's in film school, and they're the reason I have a house. Late Nighter spoke to Simon Rich. He wrote for SNL on the topic John Mulaney. Simon says, Mulaney's success is one of the least surprising things I've ever seen. It was apparent from the moment I met him. He was the funniest person in the world. It was instantaneous. Like within the first 5 or 10 minutes I was speaking to him, I was convinced he was the funniest person on earth. Truly, we started writing together the day we met. I couldn't wait. He talked about the writing process. The writers get together for a few weeks before the show starts to write the commercial parodies, or at least that's how we did it in the aughts. So I met him on a Tuesday night about a week or two before the season started, and if my memory's correct, I think we were writing together within minutes of meeting. Did he have any favorite sketches that did not make it to air? He said, luckily, we've gotten most of them on now, because every time Mulaney hosts, he forces the issue and gets our favorite sketches over the finish line. A lot of the sketches we've had on the show since 2011 have been sketches that we wrote 15 years ago, like Toilet Death Ejector and Switcheroo. We couldn't get him on the air until Mulaney became enormously famous. Irene, too, told the SF Chronicle one thing she learned about comedy in LA: there's no such thing as a casual stand-up show. She explains, there could be anyone here at any time. One time I was just doing a backyard show. I'm like, who cares? I'll do whatever. Set wasn't very good, which is fine. Then afterwards, I'm like, oh, you guys all work at some big agency? Oops. In the Bay, a backyard show was its own reward. She says, here, everyone's just like, we're just trying to get good at stand-up. We don't even know if we want to do comedy. We're just kind of hanging out. It's more nebulous. All right, this next thing here, I'm going to cop to. I'm going to raise my hand and go guilty. I think this is fantastic. I like Irene's comedy a lot, but this next thing here, I'm guilty of this. She talks about how she gives off big they energy. Her tour is called the Big They Energy Tour, and it gets its title from what Tu calls people's ongoing assumption that even after she corrects them, that she uses gender-neutral pronouns. She describes her comedy as not that gay, but still plenty gay for her core audience, but leaving room to explore other socio-political topics. A recent set at Eli's took swings at both lefty activists and fibroids. She's also trying to use the stage more, move around a little bit. Some people use the whole stage, and I'm like, but where am I going? Portland Mercury spoke to Tina Frill. Tina said, one time I came home from an open mic and I asked my mom, who was in the audience, and said, were they clapping because I was actually good, or were they clapping because I'm disabled? It was inspiring. And she said, well, maybe a little of both. And that sent me into a total breakdown. I never thought I could be good at being a comedian. It was never something that interested me, but I fell into it on a whim, something to do. Comedy was a bucket list thing, some way to get on stage. I never thought I'd get a little into stand-up comedy, but that maybe it would ease my anxiety for stage and I could finally sing on stage and bring myself to perform. But the knack I had for it and the external validation, people were telling me I had something there. As for leaning into disability as part of the set or not, Tina said, I remember the first couple times doing an open mic, I didn't talk about disability, and it only took a matter of a few weeks. It was one tag at the end of a joke. Oh, I've got a good life, great friends, great family. I have this beautiful state. I got a little bit of brain damage, but that's okay. And it hit like no other joke. In a way, that was like an icebreaker. And then quickly after that, I wrote the joke of, I'm disabled, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And all the jokes orbited around that one concept. For me, it's the stuff I wish I could say to people in person, on the bus, across the counter. And it comes from rage, the quiet rage that I would just try and go about my life, and I would make people uncomfortable constantly. And that's why I say I suffer from people. It's got nothing to do with my disability, but all those micro reactions. All day, every day. I never set out to write this comedy so people could walk out with an enlightened perspective. I didn't want to change them or their outlook. I just wanted to call them out and sort of like get above it. If I'm being honest, I think not wanting to be put in a box comes from some internal ableism. It's a little ironic that often in interviews I'll say one thing, which is that I don't want to be seen as a disabled comic, yet in my actual comedy, a lot of it revolves around disability. Good stuff there. Really interesting. And that is your comedy news for today. If you enjoy the program, tell a friend about it. They might like it too. Numbers have been up. Really appreciate y'all listening every day. If you would like the program without a commercial interruption, there's a way to do that. Link in the show notes. Short version, it's $5 a month. You know, it's October, so you'll get 31 of these. Divide 5 by 31. Who can do that? Deacon Mike, do that and send me the answer. Anyway, it's probably not a lot of money. You'll get this and the other shows on the network without commercial interruption. For example, I host another podcast that's called 5 Good News Stories. And just this past weekend, we started doing on Saturday 5 Good News Christmas Stories. I know that it's early October. Believe me, I also like ad revenue. Christmas stuff sells, baby. All right, see you tomorrow.